Рушит город мой хардбас, пиво, семки и напас. Весь район боится нас.
Last weekend, I attended the No rally in Sydney, and we can talk a little bit about the rally as well. And there was rallies in every major city across the country. And Tom and I on the show last week, we encouraged people to head out. Some people actually came and said hi, so I appreciate that. It was nice to meet a few people that put some anonymous faces in the comment section or something, materializing in reality.
Which almost never
rally
happens.
itself, yeah, the rally itself was pretty weird because it wasn't put on by the official No campaign. It was put on by basically legacy remnants of the anti-COVID lockdown kind of freedom rally kind of organizers. And so that's a really weird kind of collection of, different, what the left call cookers now, which are basically, various kind of conspiracy theory communities. So you had the Australia One supporting Australian QAnon people there. You had, all kinds of strange characters. And then on the stage itself, that the event began with an Aboriginal smoking ceremony and basically like a welcome to country with didgeridoos being played and some Aboriginal elder.
This is at a rally representing the No side of the vote. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. How crazy is that?
Why? Did you attended this yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it with my own eyes.
What was the response? What was the vibe and reaction to seeing Aboriginal smoke ceremonies at like the No campaign rally? Like, were people into that? Were they kind of just enduring it because they had to?
Most people were just enduring it. There was one person one or two women who were like enthusiastically clapping about how much they loved the Aboriginals and how we're not racist and so on. But the majority of the people were just kind of standing there like, because a lot of the people there were kind of, there was like the weird kind of groups of, I don't know, little factions that were kind of clustered around the middle. And then the peripheral people all looked like just normal white people. They probably vote One Nation. Some of them are probably even more radical than that and are sympathetic to our views. But they're kind of just peripheral and standing there showing their support. And it was kind of funny. There was this one rotund Aboriginal woman. I had a sign. My sign said, vote no to white guilt. And this random Aboriginal woman, she came up to me and her face was painted in Aboriginal flag face paint. And she came up to me and she wanted to get a photo. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll take selfies with this fat Aboriginal woman. It'd be funny if she ends up realizing who I am or whatever. But, it was kind of like a weird collection of people.
Did you see like did you see like any influencers, any streamers or anything like that? Did you happen upon anyone?
Yeah. So Elijah Shaffer came down, so that was good. Obviously, he's my friend. I did his podcast before, so it was good to see him. Avi Yemeni was there. That was kind of funny because Avi and I had this kind of bizarre interaction. So I saw Avi arguing with Elijah. So I just kind of kept my distance a little bit, but I walked over to them because I wanted to see what they were arguing about. And as soon as Avi looked away from Elijah and he locked eyes on me, his face just kind of like, oh, fuck, like, I hate it. Like, he just instantly recognized who I was. We'd never met before, but obviously he must know. And when I went to approach him afterwards, he just wouldn't even look me in the eye. I put my hand out to shake his hand. He wouldn't shake my hand. I thought, I'll try and just be civil and normal and try and just have a gentlemanly discussion. You know what I mean? Just behave like Because if I went in there acting like an idiot, it might make me look unhinged. I thought if we have a sensible discussion, it could be good. But he didn't want a bar of it. He wouldn't shake my hand. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. He was looking away and down to the ground. He's like, I know who you are. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't want to talk to you.
It doesn't surprise me because like he's Avi's cleverly built his reputation on being kind of, the guy who makes the witty, clever remark and de-intellectualizes his opponent very quickly and then moves, he clips it together. Like whoever edits his videos, maybe he does a bit of it himself. He clips it together. It's funny. It's good content. It's good entertainment. But he picks his battles, right? And it doesn't surprise me that when he saw you, he was just like, "Oh shit!" Right? Okay, I don't know how I'll go with this guy. This guy might have me covered intellectually, right? Because Joel's like that. He's very like intellectually intimidating, and he's very calm when he comes up to you. He's like scarily calm. He just has this confidence in his eyes. It's just like, any argument I get in with this guy is I'm gonna get destroyed. And I suppose that's what Avi felt like when he was approached.
Well, I would immediately ask him, Avi, you're here to support the No campaign. How come all your Zionist friends are on the other side? How come Mark Liebler and so on are all the architects behind the Voice? What's up with that? Why aren't your fellow Zionist Jews standing with the right wing? And it wouldn't even be like a gotcha moment. I just would be genuinely curious, like how he would try and explain that, like what his perspective would be. Maybe he would say something interesting. I don't know. I've never met the guy or spoken to him before. I don't know him.
Pretty likable. Well, the same thing he accuses, I think he's good value sometimes, but at the end of the day, he never pushes it far enough. He is Jewish and he identifies a lot with his, Jewish background. It means a lot.
He served in the IDF for 3 years, so
right, and
it means a lot more to him than Australia.
It's like he's incapable of understanding that, Jews might be up to something in Australia. It's like, that's anti-Semitism straight away. The same thing he accuses the left of with cancel culture and, name calling and finger pointing. He does the exact same thing the minute like his Jewish colleagues are challenged, or just like Jewish power. You even suggest that Jewish power could be used to potentially undermine Australia's national sovereignty or something like that. Like any sort of criticism of the Jews, and he just like knee-jerk responds with, that's anti-Semitism, right? So that's his, what would you call it? That's his soft spot, I suppose.
I can't remember who got him with it, but I remember someone said to Avi at one point, if Israel went to war with Australia, which side would you fight for? Which side would you support? Because it's very obvious he would pick Team Israel.
Oh, people are saying in the comments that, he knows what he's doing and he's playing an active role. It's very possible. I'm not sure. I would be really surprised if someone with his influence doesn't sit down every now and then with Mossad or some intelligence agency. I don't know. But it might not be the case. I can't say for sure.
Yeah, but whether he is supported by Mossad or not, the point is that he obviously feels very strongly about his Jewish identity, and that's motivating to him. And he's part of the broader Jewish community, which is a very organized community, a self-conscious community. So when he was arguing with Elijah Schaffer, it was interesting because my impression is that Schaffer has known, even though Schaffer moved to Australia recently, because Avi was in conservative circles and went to America a bunch of times. They'd interacted before, they'd been on friendly terms in the past. But Elijah, after he had me on his podcast a couple months ago, he was supposed to speak at CPAC in Sydney, which was a big conservative conference about a month ago or so. I think he interviewed me 2 or 3 weeks before the conference. So anyway, he's supposed to speak at this conference, and there was this big controversy because he interviewed a neo-Nazi and he's an anti-Semite and he said bad things about Aboriginals or whatever. And so they tried to cancel him and put pressure on CPAC to not have him on. And we discussed this on the show. I played a clip from ABC Report, had a whole thing where they interviewed Warren Mundine, who was one of the organizers of CPAC. There was all this pressure on you to stop Elijah from speaking. Why did you let him speak? And Warren Mundine said the Jewish community were putting a lot of pressure on, that they didn't want him to be able to speak. And ultimately, Warren Mundine stood strong, I guess, against the Jewish community, surprisingly, and they let Elijah speak anyway. But what it showed was that the Jews were not happy that Elijah was speaking. And then immediately after CPAC, Avi Yemeni started talking shit on Twitter about Elijah, saying he shouldn't have been allowed to speak at CPAC. He's an anti-Semite. It's making the conservative movement look like a bunch of anti-Semites and so on. And I remember pointing out at the time, it's kind of funny how all these conservatives will talk about how we don't do cancel culture like the left. We support free speech and all of this stuff. But then as soon as someone says anything critical of the Jews or has a conversation with somebody else who says anything critical of the Jews, all of a sudden we've got to cancel them. All of a sudden we've got to behave like the left and deplatform them, cancel them, excommunicate them. Anyway, so they were arguing, and he was accusing Elijah of being an anti-Semite, and Elijah was kind of like, what's your problem? It was a pretty funny interaction. He wouldn't shake Elijah's hand either, I observed. Elijah had his hand out, and he refused to shake his hand. So he's a very petty individual, Avi Yemeni. And but the funniest point was at one point when Avi said, "If I associate with you, Elijah," because Elijah wanted to, I don't know exactly what they were talking about. I only heard part of the conversation. But Avi more or less said, if I was to associate with you now, Elijah, the entire Jewish community would shun me. And then Elijah Shaffer was like, oh, so
he actually said that?
You're saying so there's an organized Jewish community and they shun people, they try to control who you can associate with? That's crazy, So it was pretty funny, that whole interaction. But yeah, anyway, that was just kind of a sideshow. But the event itself, I guess probably the highlight of the event actually was that I ended up getting myself on SBS News somehow, and this really upset Antifa because they
really? Have you got like a link or something?
Yeah, I'll pull it up here. I got the clip actually because the Antifa really wanted. Here we go. Antifa got really upset that I got platformed or something on SBS, an evil neo-Nazi.
Yeah, there's like a policy against this.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there is. I mean, but
there's an unspoken policy. Like, you're not supposed to platform anyone on the far right. Like, you never get interviews. You never get contacted by journalists. It doesn't matter how prominent you are in a specific events, current affairs, whatever. You don't get your opinion broadcast. You don't get the right to say anything on mainstream media. It's been that way for the past 3 years or so in Australia, especially after Brent and Tarrant.
Anyway, I'll play this little clip.
Is Hyde Park another no rally?
I am fearful that if it does pass, that the voice will be used to go against the Parliament's will or against the Australian people's will and impose the Aboriginal agenda on this country.
Feeling.
Yeah, anyway, it's just a short little clip that they put in, but it was good. I mean, I said a lot more when they interviewed me.
Of course.
But there was someone dug up something from some SBS podcast or radio show where they had a more extended play of my remarks as well. They put up like almost like a minute of me talking, minute and a half, and then they had someone fact check what I said. But it was quite interesting. I guess that made it worth going to get those little moments. And I had my, vote no to white guilt sign, and so everyone got to see that. And it injected a little bit of...
They presume to be able to fact check someone's point of view. It's a point of view. How do you fact check that?
Yeah, well, they were fact checking me, saying, well, why, like, if it's just because the reporter, when she was asking me questions, she said, why does it need to be, so why do you oppose it? What's the big deal? It's just an advisory body. And I said, well, why does it need to be in the Constitution then? The only reason you would put it in the Constitution is that it's going to be more than an advisory body. You're going to give the High Court power to define exactly what it is now. Whereas there's a million different advisory bodies that already exist. Any advisory body can be created at any time. You don't need a referendum to create an advisory body. So if that's all it is, then this whole referendum is pointless. So, they fact checked me and said, well, actually, it's going to be an advisory body. So it's like, well, you don't actually know that. You don't know what the courts are going to decide because, courts, ultimately it will be up to the court. People can predict, the court will decide this way, the court will decide that way. You don't know how the court's going to decide. Only the court will know at the time when they make the decision. So there's no reason to even put yourself in a position where the court can make that kind of decision. If the government can create an advisory body that's non-constitutional at any time they want. So, the whole thing doesn't make any sense, as we've discussed in the show many times. But anyway, the voice of Parliament is going to get raped in this referendum. They'll be lucky to get 40% yes votes. I don't think they'll even get that at this point.